is being recorded. This meeting is also being offered virtually utilizing Zoom, which is a cloud-based platform for remote video and audio conferencing. The Zoom application is free to the public. The general public is therefore able to join the meeting by connection through the internet or by calling in by phone. The public is also able to observe the meeting on the township's YouTube channel. Please continue to check the township website calendar for any updates related to these public meetings. Agendas for these public meetings will also be available on the township's website. Please be reminded that this meeting is being video and audio recorded and will be posted to the township's YouTube channel for viewing. The meeting will now proceed with the chairman calling the meeting to order and identifying all other members present in the meeting room and those joining the meeting via Zoom. The chairman will then confirm those members joining by Zoom can be heard.
Okay, welcome all to the Thursday, May 15th, 2025 East Lampeder Township Emergency Services Committee. We do have a quorum here today, so we can take action on our agenda, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll just make sure you see on there. Can you hear us, Dave?
Yeah, I have you.
Okay, we can hear you fine. That's great. Thank you. So first order of business is the approval of the minutes for the March 20, 2025 regular meeting. Motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any discussion on those? Hearing none, we'll take the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstained, and motion carries. And we'll move on to old business. A report from the fire apparatus replacement committees, hand in hand.
Yeah, I have no update at this point, still on track for as previously stated, so.
Very good. And we'll move to Lafayette and ladder truck.
Yeah, pretty much the same deal. With these long lead times, you probably won't hear a whole lot for the next couple of meetings. But certainly if something comes up, we'll keep you posted.
And under old business now, under VR subcommittee reports, anything on public information? Any progress on our?
We had our meeting last night, relatively productive. We have game plan moving forward now. We'll be seeing disseminated meeting minutes here. Hopefully by the end of the week, part of my work schedule tomorrow. And then we'll move from there to get the next quarterly newsletter pamphlets out.
Okay, great. And anything from finance? We're on a question. We haven't been meeting, so I think I'll discuss that a bit more with what our steps will be going forward on finance and human resources. Any volunteers? Anything to report? No. Anything new? I mean, we had some nice progress in our last report. I know Ron's had some good things to report. You know, I know that at times getting volunteers, you know, that was a very significant issue for us just a few years ago. I think a little bit coming off of COVID, maybe there is a bit of a return to normalcy on that. I know it's always a challenge for everybody, but you know, something we want to always talk about when we need to. So maybe no news, good news there right now. And item C then under old business are calendar activities.
So please remember to update driver's lists when you have a change. And we appreciate the spill reports that come in from all of the fire companies. So please continue to do that so that we can track those and have DEP reports when necessary.
Okay. All right, very good. We'll move on to new business. Just going around to our fire departments now.
Child Protect, is coming up June, 10th. We just had a Penn Medicine blood drive yesterday at the firehouse. It was fairly successful. PR committee met with, Lisa from Parks and Rec, Lafayette had a representative there, and High Industries. They're working towards doing a joint like winter celebration there with the industrial park. Some more to come on that in the future. April 26th, we had our Oxford. We sold a little over 2,700 meals. Next Oxford is October 18th. That's all I got.
My neighbor appreciates the ox roast for sure. Lafayette.
Annual spring barbecue here back in April, got about a $10,000 profit roughly off of that. Really good help from the community as well. Obviously, any food fundraiser like that's labor intensive. We did, our board approved a contract to take care of some crack repairs and sealing of our driveway for about $21,000. That was on the $7,500 expenditure list for this year. It's getting to the point where we need to do a little proactive work now, so we don't end up with a much bigger issue later. So that work will be taking place here probably within the next month or less. Annual fund drive should be in mailboxes quite literally any day for the spring. So that is headed out. It's that time of year where we are down one live-in from Stevens Tech due to graduation. That program is open anywhere from 2 to 3 firefighters for us a year, whether it's duty crew, full-time, live-in, some sort of status. So we're continuing to work with them and advertise there to make that opportunity available there. It's been a good add-on for us. We get them for a couple of years, typically coming from another department where they have some training, and so they're not just coming in green, and it's worked out really well.
So it works for them. I mean, that's what it sounds like, because you always have.
Yeah, it seems like we always have every school year about 1 to 3 students that come in.
Yeah.
Also, in case anyone happens to drive by our station around May 28th and see a lot of police vehicles, state police is using our facility for their annual Troop J drill. So just wanted to make everybody aware there's nothing going on. So concern, but on the 28th, if you drive by and see that, that's what's going on. Upcoming events, we have quite a number of public relations events, and obviously as much as we can at those events, we're doing recruiting as well. Have some good opportunities coming up. We're going to be assisting High Corporation with their summer concert series. Our state cook-off is going to be June 7th. And of course, as I mentioned last time, our cadet camp, August 1st and 2nd. That's all we have.
Well, that's good. And Dave Ronks.
We had 14 of our new members complete the passenger vehicle rescue awareness class at the station. We are working on upgrading our DeWalt power tools on the rescue, and we continue to gain new members. We just had one apply Monday night at company meeting, so we're averaging about 1 a month.
That is very positive news on, whatever you guys are doing to get into the community very close by. It's working. That's great. Okay, and hand it in.
Yeah, just a couple of, again, projects or events that we have coming up. We're doing our town cleanup this coming Saturday. We'll be cleaning up the underpass there. So if you drive by early Saturday morning, you'll see that. Next Saturday, we have our chicken barbecue coming up, spring chicken barbecue. And we're well into planning for our auction coming up in June and already the marathon, believe it or not, in September. So we're working on all those. Firefighting side, we had, I think, about 5 or 6 guys just completed essentials here a few weeks ago. So we have a handful of members that have taken that. So it's a pretty big commitment to do that course. So yeah, we continue to do a lot of training and continue to get new members as well. I voted a few in again the last meeting. And then I guess the other major thing that we're kind of working on right now is the squad replacement process. We're meeting on that here fairly regularly. We'll have more news coming on that, but it's going to be a process, but it's time to replace squad 2. And so we're looking at probably replacing that with some type of a fire police vehicle. We'll see how that all pans out, and also taking into consideration Squad 1's going to be 20 years old here in a few years. So that's kind of the main focus on in terms of the apparatus or equipment side right now. So that's
So the five that just completed their training, are they new members as of like this year?
They would, for the most part, they're probably within the last several years. I mean, that's a program that that's, I forget what it is. You guys could probably tell me 180 hours or something like that. So it's a pretty extensive program, and it's tough to pull it off every year. So sometimes it might be a couple of years worth of guys, but yeah, it's one of those things that they were hitting hard. I think the whole 4 or 5 months of the year, and it's one of those deals where they're doing it 2 nights a week and Saturdays, and it's a lot of hours. So when they come through that, they're usually pretty well. They've got pretty much, they call it consensus as well. So it is covers. They're usually ready to go after that. So
Great. Okay, I don't know anything from our citizen members. Sure.
Any follow-up to the questions I presented for our preparation for the future? The influx of citizens we're gonna have, has that been researched at all about this committee?
Not as a committee, I would not say, and you're talking about the new building projects that are coming in and apartments that are coming in, and what are the preparations for that in terms of our services, and this committee, which the fire companies, I would imagine, have as a discussion point. Is there anything from the fire companies on that side? Any discussion about that? Or how that would be discussed, like when a new neighborhood comes in?
I don't know that, it's anything outside of what we've been doing. I mean, this may be a larger scale, but yeah, I don't know if there's anything specific that was discussed.
So as an example, I'm sure that many of you have driven by and seeing Greenfield North, rising up. At some point, there'll be an inspection. I would think of a tour to get familiar and so forth. From Lafayette and perhaps from Whitmer, I would think. Is that how it's happened in the past, Ralph, could you say?
So for example, when the reserve went in, there was a day or two where fire companies were invited to go through the building.
Police get the same type, okay, so they would be more of a township, maybe review of it.
The fire companies also get the chance to review the plans when they come in on the
Right.
plan development process.
Right.
Public comments.
Other questions that you have on that? What do you, in terms of preparation?
That kind of answers it. It's just the fact that we're gaining between 1,000 to 1,500 more residents in the general area. You can't put a coal mine to that, but I'm gonna bring up in the financials, I see that automatic fire alarms, it was listed as a line item as $150. I don't know how accurate that is, but looking at the ordinance, there should have been more reported than $150. So I just wanted more clarification on that. But anytime you're adding more residents, especially that, is an increase in automatic fire alarms and et cetera, which comes with a price to each organ, obviously anybody that's responding to that. So that was my whole, when you're looking at our mission or our vision, we have an obligation to look at this and figure out how taxing this is gonna be. That was kind of my question of this is, do we have a plan, or do we wait until we see an influx of automatic fire alarms and then we start addressing it? So that was kind of my.
No, I understand what you're saying. It would seem once they're up and running and they have management in place, that'd be a great opportunity for our fire companies to come in. Who are the managers? Let's go over what our ordinances are about alarms, making sure they have full understanding of that, and any way they could mitigate that maybe they have a plan for that also, you know, but, I would think we need to get their management in place. But, it's a great point. You know, we have two major developments coming in. One, yeah, Greenfield looks like it'll be, you know, in place, probably as a whole, perhaps faster. And, you know, that's a large number of people. So it's a great point. And I just ask the fire companies to be really aware of that. You know, once we get into that point of the fishing line, you know, High cooperates with our township, you know, very well. I think they make every accommodation to us.
The other thing we said at the last meeting was we're going through the comprehensive planning process right now, so fire companies will certainly be.
Okay. Yeah, and that's the new assessment of, you know, what do we have? What's our,
Takes a look at.
You know, living,
land
yeah,
use
everything.
and Services and capital needs and
Mhm.
Do you have a time frame when?
We actually have a meeting tomorrow that will
Okay.
be laying out a little bit more of the time frame for the stakeholder meetings.
Great. Appreciate that.
And then that feedback, will obviously, what deals with emergency services will come through this committee, correct? Before it's, or will it just be presented at the,
how you see that taking shape.
I'm sorry, I was looking at
it's okay.
Jeff in, so
We're looking, what's the comprehensive?
Yeah, so-
Comprehensive plan, does this committee have a role when that
Yes.
comprehensive plan is being developed?
the intent of the consultant to actually come to the ESC meeting, and I don't know which one yet, as I said, we'll be that timeframe out tomorrow, but present and get feedback from the ESC as a whole.
You know, I think perfect opportunity for those questions that you're having too. Yep.
Just want to go back to Rob's point there for a second. You know, obviously, as Tara mentioned, you know, those plans come through our chief, and they review it with our line officers and then provide feedback for the township as far as planning it. When it comes to the influx of, you know, additional calls, and as you mentioned, it's hard to know what it's going to produce in that realm. You know, I think one of our frustrations, as a company is, you know, we get it, there's going to be automatic alarms. I think one of our frustrations is, it seems like sometimes we got to get up to, you know, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 worth of fees before we could even get a seat at the table and deal with the issue after we've responded out there 30, 40 times in a year. And I think that tolerance for that, you know, at the township level is a little too high.
Other examples where, like the reserve, I would say, where, you know, it seems like they have good internal procedures, policies that control for that. I don't know if you had examples that.
Yeah, I mean, you think back, we had, this is going back, you know, 2-3 years in college, we had the Red Roof. Scott, there's probably a couple of other habitual offenders that come to mind. Let's sit here and think about them.
The problem, there are some places that have absolutely great procedures in place. And there are some places that just absolutely do not care. Some of those have already just been mentioned here. It's a lot of the hotels have built a franchise that's now disenfranchised and are privately owned. We go to the river, thank you for people exaggeration to say on a daily basis. It's the same thing. Broker and broker. They're either the showers are too hot or they're smoking who knows what in the rooms. And it's constant. And I try to talk to the owner and say, listen, this doesn't work. You know, you need sensors that they don't care. I was actually going to question the same number for the false alarm. Certain several places that are well over time, they should be starting to get fines.
Sure.
Do you make it billed for false alarm?
Some must know.
Is that like Is there a standard procedure? Because I
Yes, it's
would,
an ordinance, it's 9-90-5.
We do not bill for false unless there's a significant financial loss, such as the other night we used some foam at an incident that's going to be billed because that's expensive. There's fire gear damage or that type of thing that typically bill for that, but we don't bill for routine faults. We rely on the ordinance to help out with that.
Process for that is, if we show up to a call and it's a legitimate false alarm, it's obviously if it's set off by cooking or something, then clearly the system did its job. But if it's due to mechanical issues, steam coming out of the showers, then we submit a false alarm report to the township, and then that's what they do with it from there. Goes to the township's decision making.
The question is, it should be a decision, it's clearly defined in an ordinance.
Yeah, we follow the ordinance.
So like, then it goes back to this line item says $150 for alarm fees collected. One alarm fee is $50. So that would mean we had 3 false alarms in a year? Or is it money distributed somewhere else?
I don't know the answer to that. It's possible that that's all we collected, but we billed much more than that.
Can we have that presented to us as a committee?
Gather the information.
So we can track of physically, because clearly an example is given that there's been traces of stuff submitted, and if we're not recouping that money, then there's clearly an issue.
So that's a report on ordinance violations, as far as false alarms.
Yeah, 90-5 is the. So if they are billed from the township for the false alarm, if they don't pay, what is the course of action for the non-paid bill?
Yeah, we have to go into a collection process.
Have we done that?
Yes.
Is that something consistent with the usual offenders? Something like that?
Yeah. There have been over the years, I think it's been a few years since we had somebody who was really like Red Roof or the old Econo Lodge. Many years ago, the Holiday Inn. So, yeah, they sort of have a spike and we address it and it goes back down.
That'd be great for our next meeting. Maybe we could see a report on that, how it went down for last year.
I'm just concerned that, we have an ordinance here, very clear, updated and was amended. And if the fire department starts expressing concern that there's no follow through, and I see $150, and the first time it's $50, second time it's $100, and then it's $50 each time. That's where I kind of question of where do we stand with this? Because that should be a concern with anyone on this committee is we're not recouping fees, and if we're doing it, where are we status of collections, especially if it's businesses?
That's but $50, these businesses, that's nothing to them. They're not going to fix their faulty equipment that's sending false alarms.
Cost them a couple thousand, probably realistic.
They're looking to deal false alarms, especially if they're not being billed.
Well, that report would help us, knowing, again, just trying to track the numbers on who are the worst offenders and then see if we can mitigate it somehow. But good points. Anything else on that topic? Chief.
Point for thought. It seems like in these situations, there are times where we as the fire company have nowhere to turn. An example, my last duty week, which is 2 weeks ago, we ran the Mennonite Historical Society 3 months. same sensor all 3 times. And I was there the third, or first 2, but I said, you know, this needs to be. They can tell her, this needs to be replaced. Well, that's all we can do. And if they say, "Oh, do it," then we keep going. Whereas if there was somebody that, I don't use the word like a fireman, but somebody that would we'd be able to turn that over to and say, hey, listen, we've been here 3 times this week, their system needs an update. Can somebody handle that? That'd be great.
We ever had anyone like that call on? We could recommend that.
Township's number is 393-1567.
If they call that, then will someone go out and take care of it? I think is what his question is.
We will pursue a resolution to it. As we have in the past, when we are notified.
And I'm not trying to be smart. Yeah. Was out of this for a while. Is that something like that, something you want to know?
It would be. And I personally have asked for these things. I personally have gone out to many of the hotels with almost all of you. I've personally addressed these types of situations.
Do we address it or do they get a fine? That's the question.
The issue. If they address the situation and they rectify it, abate the issue, there's no fine assessed.
Even though it's a part of the ordinance that's very clear, it's determined as a false alarm. Because the ordinance is very clear on this, and that's why I want to make sure that we give some person something and then we don't another. If we do that, then what good is an ordinance? When I see $150 here,
The ordinance was always to get alarm systems fixed. That's the goal.
I agree, but
I work for everybody in the community.
but we are taking an apparatus out the door and respond. I mean, it comes with a cost. Comes with some kind of cost. It's not like it's not taking someone out of service and responding to that. So at $150, when we know that there's cases that clearly meet this ordinance, my question is, are we following the ordinance or are we not?
I've answered that.
Well, the report should show us that. And really, if people are in collections and it's caught up into that world, which I know can be, that could really get tied up. That would tell us something. But, I appreciate you bringing it up, Chief, because there's the procedure, you're going to call the township. We need, this is the 3rd time. They're just not changing this. We need to work together and get that addressed. They don't address it. Well, now we go to the ordinance and see what are the steps you have to take next. But I would like to think, especially I think on a report like that, we are responsive. If we get that report, guys are going out of your way, you're stopping here. You can tell the sensor's no good and they're not responding to it. Our staff can move in and just make sure they know.
I mean, section B clearly defines this. It's very clear. It goes to the board of supervisors, and then the fees distributed partially offset the cost of manpower response necessity by the fire alarms. Exactly how the ordinance is written. So if we're not following the ordinance and we're letting people slide, then this ordinance isn't being followed. And that was my question.
I think you could get a black and white answer on, okay, who didn't, we tried to mitigate, work with them and get it fixed. They don't. Now you get fined. They don't pay it. Now it goes to collections. That report may show that. I don't want to say somebody's not following up on it because it might get caught up in this, process, which they're probably aware of too. Say, well, okay, they're going to fine us, but then, we'll drag it out. In other words, but first step, get a report, see what those violations are, and kind of go from there. As I see it, any feedback?
Now we just have to review the report and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would like to see that. I know there's always been some concern about where does that go, what happens, how much of that is followed up on, whether it is or isn't. To that point, it's always said, how do we get the calls down? But, that's certainly, we run, depending on the year, anywhere from, 130 to 200 arms a year. And some of those are repeats, some of them aren't. Some are legit. The system did its job, but that's one of our areas we deal in. It's not unique just to us, but we obviously handle it. So.
To add on to that, and I think that's where it kind of frustrates us because we have to make a determination if it's legitimately a false alarm. If I walk in here in the bathroom, cigarettes at your own, that's not your fault. Such. That's the system, saw smoke, it did its job. The problem we have is when that's constantly the case, as i.e. the red ribbon, where the people are constantly smoking. The system sees smoke is doing its job, but now what we do about this? Why are we still these people that live here still here? Why? I understand that it's not always a legitimate false alarm. Case of bad sensor and it keeps going along, bad flow switch or something. Yes. I think there's two separate issues here.
Yeah. I would say it's not everybody, but you can identify which offenders are and then target them for, whatever we have to do to get them to comply, or, if it's through the punishment of the ordinance, then that's what has to happen, the consequence of it.
I guess the concern is we are now throwing subjective information in this. This ordinance is very clear, it's very objective. And when we let one person slide, are we letting another person slide? So that was my question to this ordinance. If it's determined it's a false alarm, the ordinance is very clear, black and white, what the steps are to take care of it. If we are not following this ordinance, either one, this ordinance needs to be updated, or moving forward, once we get this report, we need to make sure that the proper steps are being followed according to ordinance.
I don't want to say anybody's being allowed to slide. If you're working with somebody to get something fixed, that's one thing. If they're not cooperating, then we should be moving forward on them, right?
Then we have to do that for everyone. And that's what I want to make sure. There's checks and balances that we're either doing it for everyone or the ordinance is going to be followed moving forward.
Fair point. For sure.
I just have a general question. If the alarm fees are not collected by the township, then what's the reason that this is a line item on here?
Say it again, Chen, if it's.
My understanding from what we just discussed is the alarm fees are collected by the township due to the ordinance, but it's listed on here as it's none of them spelled out, but it's listed on here as a revenue line.
I don't have it in front of me. Is that under the East St. Peter Township column? Whose column is it under? I believe it is, yes. Under the township. Yes.
I don't see the township on here.
I'm not seeing it. Where are you seeing
There's a box to the right. It's not on that copy. It was on the Excel spreadsheet.
East St. Peter's a column in here that makes sense.
Right.
It just wasn't on the printout. So.
Good question.
Yeah, not to belabor the point. The ordinance itself sounds like it's a nominal fee, probably doesn't even cover near the cost of the false alarm itself. Does that get reviewed annually, and what's the process for that review?
Of the ordinance?
Of the ordinance.
I wouldn't say it doesn't get reviewed, yeah. Usually some kind of a catalyst that would cause us to do that.
Yeah, I forget the most recent change to that ordinance, but.
2022 is what's on the amendment here.
I believe the Manheim Township is over $200 for a false alarm. And that's based on what I've heard from our church.
In the column, that's, yeah.
And that's significant. Significant difference. Okay, well, we got a little homework to do for our next meeting to talk about. Let's maybe a few other questions, just about, numbers and touches on each of them, anything more. Anything else from our citizens? Okay, we can, on our new business, look at that financial statement. I'd open it up to any comments or any points that anyone wants to address on the statement of revenues and expenditures from last year ending in December. Anything of note?
Yeah, I just want to note the last two December columns there should be 2024. Not 23.
Saw that as well.
Or anything unusual that we would normally see that, is noteworthy?
I don't believe so.
No. Well, it's also something we can look at, if anyone has a question about that and bring that to our next meeting, that's fine, but I appreciate the information. Essentially looking at the main expenditures, revenues, a good piece for our committee to look at.
I was curious if I, just one quick question. I seen Lafayette had quite a bit of community donations there. Is that from the fund drive maybe, or I'm just curious? I've seen.
Fund drive is probably only not even 25% of that. I can tell you half that amount comes from mine.
Is that higher than normal? I just thought that's the one number that really jumped out to me.
I believe it was 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, and basically doubled their 50 to 100. That accounts for a big chunk of it. The fund drive will account for some of that, and then the rest of that is through miscellaneous donations.
As far as the township donation, will that be reevaluated through the consultants? Or is that reevaluated through here? Is that just something, how often is that reevaluated? What the townships?
Which consultant?
Who's coming in to look at the township?
That's for the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
For the fiscal, process of the ESC or of the fire companies.
Okay.
There's a financial policy in place as to how much that increases every year.
Okay.
That was just reviewed in the past year, I think.
Yes.
Other items from the financial report? Done anything we can move on to public comment, anything from the public?
Like Russell, the gentleman's, those new, I know Ralph said, call the township, but what is the township's procedure and policy if they are to receive a call regarding a false alarm? Who does it go to? And what are those steps that may help alleviate this incident? On the fire department side, who is ultimately responsible for fielding these calls and concerns?
There's a false alarm report that comes into the township.
I more mentioned,
If there's a,
about habitual issue as in not replacing a sensor, even though that it's not going to be qualified as a false alarm because the sensor is doing its job. But we are suggesting and helping and informing the public to replace the sensors. So in case if something does happen, it is correct.
It's on the false alarm report. We will see that. If you call in, you're actually going to get new call cards soon for your apparatus because we've had a change in employees. And so AJ will be the new call person. So instead of Hutch is currently the call person. We also have a new director of planning that's coming on board. And as soon as he is up to speed, we will add him as well. But there are call cards that indicate for residential or commercial who to contact.
Tara, when you've gone out, as just to use a case study of it, when you've gone out to address that, what was the steps that got to that point?
Well, I've been out on a lot of different situations, Mike's, anywhere from the Bronx, the house that blew up from the gas explosion, to the hotel situations at numerous hotels. And years ago, in 2018, we walked through a property out on Lincoln Highway, and we were brought in because of fire response, and we were immediately shutting that property down. In other cases, we have worked with the landowner to obtain their fire alarm company to come in and upgrade the system, or replace the system, or maintain the system. There's a lot of times a bypass that's on the fire alarm system that we take note to, and we have that removed from the system so that it's actually calling in one case, actually calling in to the 911 system.
I mean, I know you'd be there for any of the major issues, the false alarm issue that would get you out there to say, hey, we've got to really do it. It's probably the situation has developed into, hey, we got to make some other moves here because it's not being acted on.
Yeah, so that occurred at the Red Roof, that occurred at the Economy. We went in, the Economy was the Economy Inn. Lodge, it was Toronto Lodge. And we went in and they were bypassing the system every single time. And there were still calls out to the fire company on a regular basis. That system got upgraded or additions to that system were done. And then calls stopped for a little while. I'm not sure where they're at this point. It's
Get out there once in a while. No, not like we did.
not like before.
Well, and I think it's been changed, at least from what I understand from Dave Keens, that there has to be more than one signal for us to be dispatched.
That's so if it's Joe Smith that's constantly lighting up, he's not sending out that alarm every time. It has to be two separate signals. Yes.
Good enough. Okay, anything else? Anything else from the public? Okay, we have our next meeting scheduled for Thursday, July 17. And I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Well,
Yep.
was approved prior to beginning of this year for Lafayette to get additional, I think it was 10,000 towards the upkeep of our truck. I was asked to ask you when we could expect that.
Yeah, that was part of the financial plan.
And we can note and follow up. Okay, great.
I have a few things.
Yeah. Go.
So we got notice from the county's engineer that the Peckway number 6 bridge over South Lawrence Road will be closed sometime in July. for 30 to 45 days, and they indicated that they will be contacting emergency services ahead of that closure. The same is true for the Conestoga number 7 bridge over Eden Road. Same general time period and same amount of time. Have you all been receiving those? I'll take that as a no. Okay. The Western Gateway project, which is from Strasburg Pike to Harvest Drive, is under design, and that is now pushed back to a bidding date of December 2026. So, well, you can't see it right now because of the voting equipment, but it's behind the voting equipment there, which I'm sure you've seen in the past in this room. The intersection 896 and 30, you may have noticed, is now has the brick inlay for the crosswalks and the new signals, and pedestrian equipment is installed. So there's still resurfacing, I believe, from 896 to the eastern boundary of the
I was incorrect the other day when I reported that too. The lights, the still temporary lights in front of the new cars are there. And I wanted to double check that one after Ralph asked me about that. I saw it the other day, but you know, it looks great. You know, they still have to take out the old poles and lights.
And then we don't have a date yet for the culvert replacement over the tributary to the Peckway on Route 30. But as soon as we do, we'll be sure that you're informed. If that's it, I think that's all of the. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Tara jumped over you.
No worries.
Yeah.
You have the EMC on the,
Oh, yes, Jeff is here. Okay. We see you, Jeff. Report from EMC.
Can you hear me now? Wouldn't go off mute. Just working with the Conestoga Valley. They're working on some mapping and that stuff at the school and so forth. They have a company that's doing it, doing the CRG and so forth. Aerial maps of the area and also floor plans and that stuff. And that'll be disseminated, I understand, to emergency services and so forth. Other than that, no other concerns at this time. We'll soon be heading into hurricane season here, so stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. Any other items? We have our July 17th meeting on the schedule. Take a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Motion and a second. All in favor?